Something in your life feels like it's stopped, not slowly, not gently, but all at once. The momentum you once had is gone. The clarity you relied on is no longer there, and now you are standing in a place that feels unfamiliar. You try to make sense of it, but nothing connects. The more you think, the less you understand. And deep down, a quiet thought begins to form that maybe this is where it ends. You do not say it out loud. You carry it silently. You keep moving, doing what you have to do. But inside, there is a weight that was not there before. It is not just exhaustion. It is something deeper. It is the feeling that something important slipped through your hands and you did not even realize when it happened. You have asked questions that never received answers. You have waited longer than you thought you could endure. You have tried to stay strong, to stay faithful, to stay grounded, but there comes a point where even strength feels fragile, and in that moment, it becomes easy to believe that what you are experiencing is the end of something that mattered. But what if you are wrong about that? What if this moment, the one that feels the most confusing, the most silent, the most uncertain, is not an ending at all? What if it is the part of your life where something is being prepared in a way you were never meant to see while it is happening? There are things moving right now that you cannot measure, cannot track, and cannot control. And the reason it feels like nothing is happening is because this part of the process was never designed to be visible. Not everything that changes your life announces itself while it is still forming. You keep looking for signs that something is happening, but all you see is stillness. The days pass, the routine continues, and nothing seems to shift in a way you can recognize. That silence begins to speak louder than anything else. It tells you that maybe nothing is changing, that maybe what you hoped for is no longer moving toward you. And slowly, without realizing it, you start measuring your life only by what you can see. But the truth is, this moment was never meant to be understood through visible evidence. What you are in right now is not a place of absence. It is a place of hidden movement. Just because something is not revealing itself does not mean it is not being formed. Some of the most important changes happen in places where your eyes were never meant to reach. You have been taught to trust progress only when it looks like progress. When doors open, when answers come, when things align in ways that make sense. But this part of your journey does not follow that pattern. This part requires a different kind of trust. Not trust in what you can confirm, but trust in what you cannot yet see. Think about how many things in life only make sense after they are complete. While they are happening, they feel random, disconnected, even frustrating. But once they come together, you realize there was a structure all along. What feels like delay now is often alignment in a form you do not recognize yet. If everything were visible, you would not need faith. If every step were clear, you would not grow in the ways you are being shaped right now. There is something being built beneath the surface of your life, and it is being done in a way that protects it from interruption, from doubt, and even from your own fear. So do not rush to define this moment as nothing. Do not label it as empty just because it is quiet. You are not standing still. You are standing in a part of the process where what matters most is happening, where you cannot interfere with it. What makes this season difficult is not only the silence, but the way your mind begins to interpret it. When nothing changes on the outside, your thoughts start filling in the gaps. You begin to question decisions, doubt your path, and replay moments trying to understand where things went wrong. It feels logical, almost necessary, to search for answers. But not every season was designed to be analyzed. There is a part of you that wants closure before the process is complete. You want clarity before the shift happens. You want confirmation that you are still on the right path. But this moment does not give you that. Instead, it invites you into something deeper. It invites you to remain steady without the reassurance you are used to receiving. You are not uncomfortable because nothing is happening. You are uncomfortable because you cannot control or predict what is happening. That loss of control creates tension inside you. It makes you feel exposed, uncertain, and vulnerable. But this is also where something powerful begins to take place. You start to detach from needing constant proof. Not everything that is real can be verified in the moment. Some things must be trusted before they are revealed, and this is where many people walk away, not because nothing was happening, but because they could not tolerate the uncertainty long enough to see it unfold. You are being stretched beyond what feels natural, not to break you, but to shift how you perceive progress, to move you from dependence on visible outcomes into a deeper awareness that not all movement announces itself. This is where your foundation is being rebuilt in a way that will not collapse when things become visible again. So instead of asking what is missing, begin to consider what is being formed without your awareness. Instead of assuming nothing is happening, understand that this silence is not empty. It is intentional, and it is doing something you will only recognize when the moment comes together. The reason this moment feels like an ending is because everything you used to rely on has been removed at the same time. The clarity you had, the direction you followed, the sense of control that gave you confidence. When those things disappear, your mind tries to protect you by assuming the worst. It tells you that something has gone wrong, that you missed something, that you are now standing in the aftermath of a loss you cannot recover from. But what you are feeling is not the result of something being taken away without purpose. It is the result of being moved into a place where the old way of understanding your life no longer applies. You are not losing direction. You are being separated from what made you dependent on visible certainty. That is why it feels unfamiliar. That is why it feels unstable. You were never meant to carry everything through control. You were never meant to understand every step before taking it. There comes a point where the path ahead is intentionally hidden, not to confuse you, but to transform how you move forward. This is where you stop relying on what used to work and begin to develop something deeper that does not depend on circumstances. If everything remained clear, you would never grow beyond what you already know. You would repeat the same patterns, follow the same logic, and stay within the same limits. But this moment is breaking that pattern. It is forcing you into a space where you cannot depend on your usual ways of making sense of things. What feels like the end is often the removal of what cannot go with you. Not everything you built your confidence on was meant to sustain the next part of your life. Some things had to be taken out of your reach so something stronger could take its place. And that transition always feels like loss before it feels like growth. So do not mistake this discomfort for failure. Do not assume that because things feel uncertain, they are falling apart. You are not at the end of something meaningful. You are in the middle of being repositioned for something you could not step into while holding on to what used to define your sense of control. There is something happening within you that you may not even recognize yet. While you are focused on what is not moving around you, something is being adjusted inside you with precision. Your reactions are changing. The way you process things is shifting. The things that once disturbed you no longer carry the same weight. This is not accidental. This is preparation. You are being aligned internally before anything changes externally. Because if what is coming arrived before this adjustment, you would not be able to hold it without becoming overwhelmed or misdirected. There are things you asked for that require a version of you that does not react the same way, does not fear the same way, and does not depend on the same patterns. This is why the process feels slow. It is not about speed. It is about stability. Something is being built in you that will not collapse under pressure, that will not be shaken by uncertainty, and that will not be lost when circumstances change again. That kind of strength cannot be rushed. It must be formed quietly, consistently, and without interruption. You may feel like you are losing parts of yourself, but what is really happening is refinement. You're being stripped of what no longer serves the next part of your life. The habits, the emotional responses, the need for immediate clarity. All of it is being adjusted so you can move differently when the time comes. What feels like inactivity is actually protection. Because if everything were happening on the outside while this inner work was incomplete, you would carry the same fears, the same doubts, and the same instability into something that requires clarity and steadiness. This process is not delaying your life. It is preparing you to handle it. So instead of resisting this internal shift, begin to observe it. Notice how you are not the same as before. Notice how certain things no longer affect you in the same way. That is evidence, not visible movement around you, but undeniable change within you. And that change is what will allow everything else to fall into place. There is a moment in every process like this where people begin to walk away, not because nothing was happening, but because they reached the limit of what they could endure without understanding. They misread the silence. They interpret the delay as rejection. And without realizing it, they step out of something that was about to shift. You have felt that tension, that quiet pressure that makes you question if continuing even makes sense. It is not loud, it is subtle. It comes in the form of thoughts that sound reasonable. Maybe this is not for you. Maybe you should move on. Maybe you have already waited too long. And the longer the silence continues, the more convincing those thoughts become. But what you are facing right now is not a sign to stop. It is a test of perception. It is the moment where everything depends on whether you define this season correctly or incorrectly. Because if you label it as the end, you will act like it is the end. And if you act like it is the end, you will never see what was forming just beyond this point. Most people do not quit at the beginning. They quit in the middle. They quit when things are no longer clear, but not yet revealed. That space in between is where decisions carry the most weight, because you are no longer driven by excitement, and you are not yet sustained by results. You are left with only one thing: your willingness to remain. There are things that only unfold for those who stay through what makes no sense. not because staying is easy, but because staying keeps you positioned. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to figure everything out. You only need to not walk away from what you cannot yet explain. So be careful with the conclusions you are forming right now. Be careful with the decisions you are about to make based on a moment that is incomplete. You are closer to a shift than it feels, and the only way to miss it is to step away before it reveals itself. What is coming next in your life will not look the way you imagined it. Not because it is less than what you expected, but because it was never meant to fit inside the limits of what you could predict. You have been trying to picture the outcome based on what you know, based on what you have seen before, but this process is not repeating anything familiar. It is leading you into something that requires a different version of you. That is why the path feels unclear. If everything matched your expectations, you would try to control it the same way you controlled everything else. You would move with the same mindset, the same patterns, and you would limit what is possible by forcing it into something recognizable. But what is ahead of you is not meant to be managed that way. It is meant to be received with awareness, not controlled with certainty. You are being positioned for something that will only make sense once it is fully revealed. Trying to understand it now will only create frustration because you are attempting to define something that is still forming. The clarity you are looking for does not come before the shift. It comes with the shift. And until that moment arrives, your role is not to figure it out, but to remain open to it. There is also a part of you that fears what you cannot define. That uncertainty creates resistance. It makes you want to return to what feels familiar, even if what is familiar no longer moves your life forward. But staying in what is known will not lead you to what you have been asking for. Growth always requires stepping into something that cannot be fully explained at the beginning. You are not being led into confusion. You are being led beyond limitation. What feels unclear now is only unclear because it does not belong to your past understanding. And once it becomes visible, you will realize that it was never random. It was precise, intentional, and perfectly timed. So release the need to predict what is coming. Let go of trying to shape it before it arrives. What is ahead of you is not uncertain because it lacks direction. It is uncertain because it has not yet been revealed. And when it is, you will not need to question it. You will recognize it. There is a shift that happens quietly before anything changes in your life. It does not announce itself. It does not come with clear signs. But internally, something settles. The pressure you once felt begins to lose its intensity. The need to force answers starts to fade. You are still in the same place, but you are no longer carrying it the same way. That shift is not weakness. It is alignment. It is the moment where you stop resisting what you cannot control and begin to stand in it with a different awareness. You are no longer trying to escape the season. You are learning how to remain steady inside it, and that stability is what prepares you for what is about to unfold. Many people believe that change begins on the outside, that something needs to happen first before they feel different. But the truth is, the real shift always begins within. It begins when your perspective changes, when your reactions change, when your internal state is no longer dependent on what is happening around you. This is where everything starts to come together. Not because the situation suddenly changes, but because you are now able to see it differently. You begin to notice that what once felt like pressure was actually positioning. What felt like delay was actually timing. And what felt like silence was never empty. You are becoming someone who can recognize movement even when it is not obvious. Someone who does not panic in uncertainty. Someone who does not walk away when things are not immediately clear. That is strength. Not loud, not visible, but deeply rooted and unshakable. And once that shift is complete, what comes next no longer feels overwhelming. It feels natural. It feels aligned. It feels like something you are ready to receive, not something you need to struggle to hold. That is why this part matters. Because without it, what is coming would not feel like clarity. It would feel like chaos. There comes a moment when everything you have been carrying begins to make sense, but not in the way you expected. It does not arrive with noise or sudden explanation. It arrives with clarity that feels quiet and undeniable. You look back, and what once felt confusing now feels precise. What felt like delay now feels necessary. What felt like loss now reveals its purpose. Nothing you went through was wasted. Every moment that felt heavy, every season that felt silent, every question that remained unanswered was shaping something you could not see at the time. And now, as things begin to unfold, you realize that you were never abandoned in that process. You were being guided through it in a way that protected you from what you were not ready to understand yet. What is coming will not feel forced. It will not feel uncertain. It will feel right in a way that removes the need for explanation. You will not have to convince yourself that it is correct. You will recognize it immediately because everything in you has already been aligned to receive it. That is what this entire process was doing. It was preparing you to recognize what belongs in your life. The struggle you felt was not meant to break you. It was meant to refine how you see, how you respond, and how you move forward. You are not the same person who entered this season, and because of that, what is now able to come into your life could not have come before. You would not have seen it the same way. You would not have held it the same way. So when it arrives, it will not feel like something new. It will feel like something that was always meant to be there, finally stepping into view. And in that moment, everything that once felt uncertain will settle into clarity. Not because the questions were answered, but because you no longer need them. You are not at the end. You're at the point where everything begins to reveal itself. And when it does, you will understand that nothing was late, nothing was lost, and nothing was out of place. Closing, you made it through something that was never meant to be easy. Not because you understood it, not because you had clarity, but because something in you refused to let go completely. Even in the moments where you questioned everything, there was still a part of you that stayed. And that is why you are still here. You thought this season was about waiting for something to change around you, but now you can see it was never only about that. It was about what was being built within you while nothing seemed to move. It was about becoming steady without answers, grounded without certainty, and strong without visible proof. What once felt like the end of your path was actually the place where everything began to be prepared. You were not being pushed away from something meaningful. You were being guided into something that required a different version of you. And now that version is no longer forming. It is here. There is nothing missing from your life right now that is meant to be there. What belongs to you is not lost. It has been aligned. And when it steps into your life, it will not create confusion. It will bring a sense of recognition that settles everything inside you. So stop looking at this moment as something unfinished or broken. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not standing in the aftermath of something that failed. You are standing in the exact place where everything has been coming together in a way you could not see until now. You are still standing, not by accident, not by chance, but because you were never meant to end where you thought you would. And what is ahead of you is not uncertain. It is simply unseen for now.